The restaurant went silent the moment she walked in. Not the kind of silence caused by elegance or fame. It was the cruel kind. The kind sharpened by whispers, hidden smirks, and eyes that judged before a single word was spoken. Plates stopped clinking. Conversations faded. Even the pianist in the corner missed a note as every head slowly turned toward the woman standing near the entrance in a pale blue dress, gripping a tiny handbag with trembling fingers. And then all eyes turned to me. I still remember the way my friends were fighting back laughter at the table near the window. They thought they had created the perfect joke. A blind date prank for their too serious friend. A setup they would laugh about for years. What they didn't know was that within the next hour, every single person in that room would be crying. Before this story begins, take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Whispered Destiny if you believe kindness can change lives and that every person deserves to be seen for who they truly are inside. Her name was Marisol Valles, and the first thing I noticed wasn't her weight. It was the fear in her eyes. Not ordinary nervousness. Not first date anxiety. It was deeper than that. It was the look of someone who had spent years preparing herself to be humiliated before it even happened. She stood there frozen for a moment as if deciding whether to run away before anyone could hurt her first. The hostess pointed toward my table. My friends watched me carefully, waiting for my reaction. I could almost hear their thoughts. They expected disgust. Embarrassment. Maybe anger. They wanted me to refuse the date publicly so they could laugh about it later. Instead, I stood up immediately. I walked across the restaurant while people stared at both of us. Marisol looked down at the floor, already apologizing with her eyes for existing in a body the world had taught her to hate. But when I reached her, I smiled and gently pulled out the empty chair beside me. And that was when the room's atmosphere changed. Marisol looked shocked. Completely shocked. Like kindness was something she hadn't expected to encounter that night. I introduced myself calmly and thanked her for coming. Her hands shook as she sat down. Across the room, my friends looked disappointed. Their joke had failed already, but they still expected me to crack eventually. They thought I was pretending to be polite. The truth was, I already understood something about Marisol that nobody else in that restaurant knew. Pain recognizes pain. 3 years earlier, I had been the one everyone laughed at. Not because of my body, but because of my father. My father, Graham Mercer, had once owned the biggest construction company in our county. He was respected, wealthy, admired. Then one terrible investigation destroyed everything. His business partner stole millions and disappeared overseas, leaving my father to face accusations he couldn't fight. Overnight, our family became social poison. People who once invited us to parties crossed the street to avoid us. My mother stopped leaving the house. I lost friends I had known since childhood. And the worst part wasn't losing money. It was watching people decide who you were without knowing your story. That kind of loneliness changes a person forever. So when I looked at Marisol that evening, I didn't see an obese girl, like everyone else cruelly described her. I saw someone exhausted from carrying invisible wounds. The dinner started awkwardly. She barely touched her food. Every few minutes she glanced around the restaurant, probably expecting someone to laugh openly. I noticed she kept apologizing for small things that didn't need apologies. Sorry for talking too much. Sorry for reaching across the table. Sorry for dropping her napkin. People only apologize like that after years of being made to feel like a burden. I asked her about her work. That single question changed everything. Her face lit up slowly as she explained that she restored old paintings for a small museum downtown. Suddenly the nervous woman disappeared, replaced by someone passionate and intelligent. She described centuries-old brushstrokes like they were living memories. She talked about art with such warmth that even the waitress stopped listening to nearby tables just to hear her speak. For the first time that night, Marisol forgot to be afraid. And for the first time, I realized how deeply cruel the world can be. Because hidden beneath years of insecurity was one of the most thoughtful people I had ever met. Outside the window, daylight spilled across the busy city streets. Children laughed near a fountain. Office workers hurried across sidewalks. Life moved normally while inside that restaurant, something extraordinary was quietly unfolding. About halfway through lunch, one of my friends finally walked over. His name was Trent Holloway, the loudest of the group and the mastermind behind the setup. He wore the same smug grin he always used whenever he thought he controlled a room. He asked if everything was surviving okay. The words sounded harmless, but everyone understood the insult hidden beneath them. Marisol's smile vanished instantly. I felt anger rise in my chest. Not explosive anger. Worse. The calm kind. I looked directly at Trent and asked him a question he clearly wasn't expecting. I asked him why hurting people was funny to him. The table beside us went silent. Trent laughed awkwardly and tried to brush it off as a joke, but I didn't stop. Years of buried frustration poured out of me. I told him people like him were the reason so many kind souls learned to hate themselves. I told him cruelty disguised as humor still leaves scars. I told him maybe the problem wasn't Marisol's body, but the emptiness inside people who enjoyed humiliating others. By then the entire restaurant was listening. Trent's face turned red. My friends stopped laughing. And Marisol, she looked at me like she couldn't believe someone was defending her publicly. Trent muttered something under his breath and walked away, but the damage had already shifted directions. Suddenly the embarrassment belonged to the people who created the prank. Not to Marisol. The rest of lunch felt different after that. Lighter. Real. Marisol slowly relaxed enough to tell me pieces of her life story. She had lost her mother at 16. Food became comfort during grief, then shame followed afterward. Doctors blamed her weight for everything. Strangers gave unsolicited advice constantly. Men online mocked her appearance. Even family members treated her like a project that needed fixing. The saddest part was hearing how small she had forced herself to become emotionally just to survive. She avoided beaches. Avoided photos. Avoided mirrors. Avoided dating entirely for nearly 4 years. Not because she lacked love to give. Because the world convinced her she was unworthy of receiving it. As the afternoon sunlight brightened the restaurant windows, I realized something painful. People talk endlessly about loving yourself, but they rarely discuss how impossible that becomes when society spends years teaching you not to. By the time lunch ended, neither of us wanted the conversation to stop. So we walked. The city was glowing beneath warm daylight skies. Street musicians played near the park. Flower vendors lined the sidewalks. Marisol seemed stunned that nobody around us was staring the way she expected. Little by little, she started smiling naturally instead of nervously. And honestly, her smile transformed everything around her. We sat near the river for nearly 2 hours talking about childhood dreams, regrets, fears, and all the strange ways life wounds people differently. I told her about my father's downfall. She listened without judgment. Not once. That mattered more than she realized. Most people only stay near pain until it becomes inconvenient. Marisol stayed. As the afternoon stretched on, I noticed something heartbreaking. Every time she laughed freely, she would suddenly stop herself, almost like happiness felt dangerous. That kind of habit only forms after years of ridicule. Before sunset, she finally asked the question she had clearly been holding inside all day. She asked why I was being so kind to her. Not flirtatiously. Not playfully. Genuinely confused. I told her the truth. I said kindness becomes easy once you understand what humiliation feels like. Marisol cried quietly after hearing that. Not dramatic tears. The silent kind people release when they feel understood for the first time in years. If this story is touching your heart so far, comment, "Kindness still exists," below and let Whispered Destiny know where you're watching from today. Over the next few weeks, our friendship grew into something neither of us expected. We visited bookstores, museums, food trucks, and quiet parks filled with daytime sunshine. Marisol slowly started reclaiming pieces of herself she had abandoned years earlier. She let me take photos of her near blooming gardens downtown. At first she hated every picture automatically, but eventually she paused long enough to actually look at herself. And what she saw wasn't the monster society described. She saw joy. Real joy. One afternoon, we attended an outdoor art fair together. Marisol wore a yellow dress that flowed beautifully in the wind. She looked nervous walking through the crowded festival, but then something unexpected happened. An older woman stopped us. The woman gently touched Marisol's arm and told her she looked radiant. Just one sentence. But I watched Marisol's eyes fill with tears instantly. People underestimate how life-changing kindness becomes after years without it. Months passed. And somewhere along the way, I fell completely in love with her. Not in a dramatic movie way. In the quiet, devastatingly real way that sneaks into ordinary moments. The way she laughed at terrible jokes. The way she remembered tiny details about people. The way she treated every lonely person like they mattered. The way she carried pain without becoming cruel. One evening, nearly 6 months after our blind date, I brought her back to the same restaurant where we first met. She froze near the entrance again. I could tell the memories still haunted her. But this time was different. This time she walked in holding my hand. The hostess recognized us immediately. So did several employees who remembered the uncomfortable tension from months earlier. But the biggest shock came when Trent approached our table. He looked completely different. Humbled somehow. He apologized. Not casually. Deeply. Apparently, his younger sister had gone through severe depression after online bullying. Watching someone he loved suffer had forced him to confront the cruelty he once normalized. He admitted that what he did to Marisol haunted him afterward. Marisol listened quietly. Then she forgave him. Not because he deserved it. Because carrying hatred any longer would only reopen her own wounds. That moment changed the entire room more than any dramatic speech ever could. Forgiveness often heals the person giving it more than the person receiving it. As dinner ended, I stood beside our table while the restaurant buzzed softly around us. Sunlight from the evening sky poured golden reflections across the windows. Everyone nearby seemed strangely emotional without fully understanding why. Then I looked at Marisol and finally said the words I had carried inside me for months. I told her she was the bravest person I had ever known. Because surviving constant cruelty without losing your softness is a rare kind of strength. Marisol cried openly then. So did several people nearby. And honestly, so did I. Before this story ends, if it reminded you that every human being deserves dignity, love, and compassion, please like, share, and subscribe to Whispered Destiny. Your support helps these stories reach hearts that may desperately need them today. The truth is, people will always judge what they see first. Weight. Money. Status. Appearance. But life has a strange way of revealing who people truly are when kindness becomes inconvenient. That blind date was supposed to humiliate one lonely woman for entertainment. Instead, it exposed every ugly truth hiding inside the people who arranged it. And it also revealed something beautiful. Sometimes the people society overlooks carry the purest hearts in the room.